Hey class. So today we're going to be talking about the Shifting Styles English 101 badge. Um, that will be due Monday at 11:59 p.m. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we've already talked in class about different types of discourses, and we've also even talked about different types of writing and the different types of writing that we do on a regular basis. And some of that might include the writing that you do online through Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, even the captions that you use on that, whenever you're texting your friends on your phones, even the writing that you do in different classes. That is all considered to be writing, of course, but it's also different styles of writing. And sometimes you might not even realize that you do these different styles of writing. We just naturally transition from writing one way to another. So today we're going to actually talk about shifting styles. So this is what the Shifting Styles badge is all about. It's all about um, self-explanatory here, shifting different types of styles in writing. And also, like we talked about from our textbook, in order to have a mastery of language, or in order to be able to play with language and to linguistically shift into different styles of writing, you have to have a linguistic competence or an understanding of the English language. So that doesn't just mean grammatical concepts such as parts of speech like nouns, verbs, adjectives, or the fact that English sentences typically come in subject, verb, object order. But it also contains detailed information about the ways in which you should speak or write for a given situation. So your linguistic competence lets you know that you can say or write things like ain't on Facebook posts, text messages, and other informal and casual situations, but that often ain't would not be appropriate in a research essay. All of these different ways of speaking and writing make up your linguistic style, and they give you a linguistic repertoire, your textbook, or your toolbox for language in your life in any situation. And so this powerful toolbox that we all have and that we all get to add to throughout our life works as social capital. So just as we talked about that story with the murder case that was solved by looking at these different texts that were sent in a message. Similarly, we all have different linguistic styles whenever we send a text, whenever we write online. This is our social card, so to speak. And so all of us write in a different way, whether it is online or even for a research paper. It might seem like there is a set way or method to writing a research paper or even to writing online, but within that methodology, we each have our own individual and unique voice that we write with. So your research paper might be different from a fellow classmates, or friends, or even your parents whenever they were in school. So each one of us, regardless of our language, we speak a dialect, similarly speaking, so regional, ethnic, social, age, or a combination of these. And we all have a number of linguistic styles available to us, just as our dialect indicates something about our identity, our styles that we choose to use in different situations. They also reveal to our listener or reader information about our identity. So interestingly, we are often unaware of the connotations that our dialect has on the ways that other people perceive us. So the way that we write online is not only unique, but it is also a way in which people can interpret who we are as human beings. So many of us can remember the first time that we heard someone that sounded different than us in our friends and family. Maybe this first encounter with a different dialect was on a family vacation to a different area of the United States, or perhaps it was when you came to orientation here at CCU, or it could have been the first time that you watched a reality television show like Jersey Shore, Swamp People, or Honey Boo Boo. So regardless of the situation in which you first heard a dialect that was different than yours, you made judgments about the speaker, even if you had never even met a person that spoke that dialect before. So this reaction is natural, but unfortunately in some circumstances it can have negative consequences. So, and one example is a Southern speaker who goes to the northeastern United States and is perceived as being less intelligent because of her pronunciation of tire, which sounds more like tar, despite the fact that she had graduated with honors from a university and is a successful businesswoman. Judgments of this sort can be quite harmful. However, there are benefits to speaking a dialect, as many times the use of a dialect can help build solidarity with other speakers of a similar dialect. So many of you may have heard of the experience of hearing someone on campus talking and you realize immediately that they are from your community or a community nearby, simply on the basis of the way that they talk, and as a result approach them and have now made a new friend. Even if you haven't had this experience, I'm sure you've gone to the movies and you may have seen different dialects, like the Southern speaker, and being involved in movies, being shown in movies, and I'm sure you've created a snap judgment of the people that are in the movies just based on the way that they speak. Or even in some cases, if you watch certain types of movies, they actually will perceive different people based on a stereotype just because of the different way that they are speaking. So it can work in different ways. So the stereotype is based on the dialect, and then that in turn creates even more of a cycle of that stereotype. So if you look at the Shifting Styles badge, you will see that there is actually a map, and that just as an example of the different types of dialect, it asks, is it pop, soda, or Coke that you drink? This dialect map indicates regions of the U.S. and their linguistic style choice for a sweetened carbonated beverage. So some places, they'll actually use the word Coke to refer to all soda rather than the word soda. And you can enlarge the map too just to see the key and where different regions use the different types of words. And there's even a link too to see your personal dialect map, so you can find out here how y'all use and you guys talk. So I would highly recommend it. It's really interesting. And even before I took even after I took a linguistics class, it was really interesting to think about the different types of dialects that were being spoken, not only just around the world, but specific to my region, because I never really thought about how different words are unique to different regions, or even the way that we speak. For example, if you go to Pittsburgh, instead of hearing the traditional Southern y'all, a lot of people there will say yins. So that's just one example of different types of words that are used in different types of regions. So one of the most interesting parts of being a language user is that while we all speak a dialect, we all have a command of a number of linguistic styles. As we mentioned before, these styles can range from formal to more informal, and the ability to change these styles, even in the middle of a conversation, is called style shifting, or sometimes it's referred to as code switching, which is what I've mostly heard in my studies. So speaking, though, is no different from writing in this way. We all shift the way that we write to meet the needs and expectations of our audience, just as we do when we're speaking. So even when we are speaking, you might not even realize it, but we are also code switching or shifting styles based on the audience that we anticipate on listening to us. So in school you may have learned that the different styles of writing, and every day you certainly read different styles of writing. What is important about all of these styles is that they are used to convey information, but more importantly, they also carry with them information that you interpret about your author or speaker that you make judgments about the author or speaker and the quality of information based on the style that they use. So if you look at the different types of authors that you read, you can hear their voices in the text. And the types of words that they use can tell you even a little bit about who they are and how they speak too. So one of the things that we all do is react to the linguistic styles of those that we are engaged in a conversation with, spoken or written. Even when speaking to people that we do not see or when reading the writing of those that we do not know, we make assumptions about the person on the other end. There are times when a person's style of communication may reveal something about them, but style is not a direct correlation to one's personality. We all perform different linguistic styles to meet the expectations of the current situation. Take, for instance, your writing. You will write quite differently in your English course than you will write on Facebook. Even the way that you write on Facebook is different from how you write in a text message. In fact, it is likely that you use different styles of text messaging for different people, and you have a wide repertoire to draw from, and you draw from this expansive style repository to make communication clear. You make it to make communication clear, effective, and generally pleasant. So, to go back to referring to the linguistic style of those that we are engaged with, I think it's interesting because sometimes if you are engaged deeply into a conversation with someone, it's actually been proven from psychologists that if you are fully engaged with the other person and you are listening intently, you will actually start to subconsciously mimic their emotions. For example, if one person crosses their arms that you're talking to, then you might cross your arms and you might not even realize it. It's a mirroring effect, is essentially. And sometimes if you are fully engaged in a conversation and say the person that you're speaking with has an accent, sometimes even what can happen is you start to mimic that accent. And I'm not saying that you might do it to mock them, but sometimes it's just a way that we subconsciously engage with someone else is just by taking on their linguistic style in their dialect. So that's just something else to think about too. And it might always be interesting too to see what their reaction might be to that, the other person, of course. So, imagine a situation where you disregard the authority that an author has on a particular topic because they use I in a paper. Only later you come to find out that they are a world-renowned expert on that particular topic. Or consider a situation where you assume that the person on the phone is actually much older than what they are, only to find out that they are a younger person with a bit of a slower paced speech. All of these situations happen to us each day as we navigate the linguistic spaces where we live. Exploring our views on shifting styles. So now that you have some background on the style, we're going to explore some of the assumptions about individuals' personalities, lifestyles, and social groups based on small observations. So, for example, think about shoes, clothes. If you see someone wearing calf-high combat boots and all black, you might make certain assumptions about what that person is like. And those assumptions would probably be different if you saw that same person wearing khaki shorts, a Banana Republic shirt, and rainbow sandals. And just as we make assumptions about people based on appearances, we also do this with the way that people use language. But if we go back to talking about judging people based on their appearances, there was this one woman who did this social experiment of her own where she took up different dating profiles on this app. And in each different profile, she actually took on a different stereotype, so to speak. So in one picture, she would dress up similarly to the person with the all black, the combat boots, and she wore heavy makeup, and the responses that she got when she was dressed like that were completely different from, say, when she dressed up in really nice, like, 1920s style dress, light makeup, hair done. So it's really interesting to think about the different ways in which people react to us, just based on our appearances. But people also react to us differently, based on language and language use. And there are actually some clips in the badge that you will see, and you will hear two different clips of women expressing their views towards styles of language use in the North and in the South. So as you listen to these, think about what assumptions the individuals are making about style and language, how it is used and how it should be used, and the type of people that use a language differently from themselves. So you can take a look at those in your own time. I also want to share with you, when I was in a linguistics class, what was really interesting was that our teacher had us listen to this interview that was being done, and it was done with multiple different people, and she asked us to identify the race and ethnicity of the different people that were speaking, just based on their voice, and only on that. And the idea was that we have an assumption of what people will look like, and the way that they look, just based on the sound of their voice. And it's really interesting, and it's surprising. The results were surprising when we actually sat down and we went back, listened to it over again, and she gave us the correct answers, so to speak. So just keep that in mind too while you're doing this badge, and even when you're walking around on campus. Just think about the different ways in which people speak, and also the assumptions that you make from the way that they talk. So for this specific assignment, what you're going to be doing is writing a few paragraphs reflecting on the points made in the video clips. So it's really important that you, as you complete this badge, that you go ahead and listen to the videos that are in here. And then there's a series of questions. So it'll ask you, what do these women seem to assume about language and dialect? What things that the women said in these clips did you find yourself agreeing with, and what did you disagree with? Do you agree or disagree that the way the people talk and write reflects their intelligence or education? What is your response to the points made by these two women? So you'll go ahead and answer those questions. You don't have to answer them necessarily in paragraph format. You can do it in bullet points, as the questions themselves are in bullet points. And then the next step of this badge is going to be the writing process. So here you're going to be doing writing in full paragraph format. And so you'll write a few paragraphs articulating your own stance on these issues. So you'll use these questions here to guide your thinking as you write a few paragraphs. So that would be about 3. So if you need more, you can write more, but I would start at 3 and then see where you can go from there. So the different types of questions that they ask here are, do you speak differently than you write? If so, do you do so in all writing situations or only in some? Give examples of how you speak and write differently, and then the reasons for this. Do you ever think there would be a valid situation to write in a style that would be considered non-standard? Why or why not? And then what about the situation would make it appropriate or inappropriate to write in a non-standard style? So if we're thinking about this question, it would be similar to going back to thinking about that wordsmithing style, or the wordsmithing badge. and about that article that we read online with all the different types of text on it. And so if you remember, they said that there are different styles of writing that are used for different platforms. And so the way that we are using writing online is actually completely different from the way that we use it for papers and even from the way that we speak. So I would think about that kind of style of writing. So it's like, for example, that awkward moment when, and then ... or that moment when ... So that kind of style of writing, that would be considered to be non-standard because it is not a full sentence, but because we can, a large audience can mutually agree on the meaning of the first half of the sentence, it is understandable. The meaning of it is clear. So that's just one example to think about whenever you're answering that question. So what about speaking? Would there ever be a valid situation to speak in a style that is considered non-standard? Why or why not? So I think it would be interesting to see the responses for this question, because I think there are some instances where we do speak in non-standard English, but I think at the same time it can also be pretty rare. Although you might have some casual conversations with your friends, typically I think we do speak pretty standard when we're speaking to our parents, in class, sometimes when we're in a large group, maybe in in a club or an organization that you might be in on campus. So those kinds of situations you might actually speak in standard English, but I'm curious to see your answers on that too. So similar to some of the other badges, this one has 3 steps. Most of them will have 3 steps, so just keep that in mind as you continue to complete these badges. So step 1 is writing, and then step 2 is writing, and then step 3 is typically going to be reflecting. So when you reflect here, you just write a few paragraphs to reflect on what you've learned from this badge. So for this badge, you might find out a lot more about yourself than you've learned before. So some of the questions that it asks you here, and this is also in paragraph format too, the 3rd step. It asks you to write a few paragraphs, but I think you can complete this one in about a paragraph or 2. So you don't need to spend a whole lot of time reflecting, but I do want to see some of that work being done on the page as well. So as a student in composition course, do you think that in order to be a good writer, you need to speak in a certain way, and why or why not? What has this badge made you realize about your own language attitudes? And what will you now keep in mind as you write across and for a variety of settings? And how will this badge impact the way that you think about language and dialect in broader terms? So that's all of the questions for this badge. And then whenever you're ready to submit, just remember to click my name from the list of the teachers and instructors from the drop-down menu. And make sure to save your documents in a PDF file. So that's really important. It's easier to read them. It's easier to look at all of the different badges that way, if they're all in one format. And then whenever you've saved that in a PDF file, you can upload that to your submission. And then after you've selected my name from the drop down, you can just click submit, and it'll go right into the system, into the badges. So I hope that you will learn a lot just from doing this badge about language and the way that you perceive language. And I don't think that there is any wrong or right way to speak, and I think you'll learn that too as you go through this badge and as you think about this badge in your own terms as well. But there are always opportunities for us to use language in different ways. So we might not necessarily be wrong, speaking wrongly in a situation. We might not always be speaking wrongly in a situation, or in different types of circumstances. We might not always write incorrectly, but the way that we write and the way that we speak might not always be appropriate for different types of situations. So it might be a little bit different from what you're used to in an English class, what you might be used to hearing, but I think it's always refreshing to understand that it is okay not to always write proper English. So, because we never write proper English online, or some of us never do. Some of us do, some of us don't. It just depends on you as the person, and then also the medium in which you're writing. Because I think it's also different from posting and writing something on your computer versus typing something up on your phone. And we looked at the different types of phones in class this past week. We looked at how some of the keyboards are limited of their number pads, and then we also looked at how phones today actually have a full keyboard on them. But even so, with that full keyboard at our fingertips, it can still be easier to type the different abbreviations instead of typing out full words. And sometimes we might have spelling errors in our posts or messages, and that's okay too. We can always learn from that. We can always grow from those experiences. And as long as we are learning that there's a difference between writing formally and writing informally, that's the best thing that we can learn. So, get this badge submitted by 11:59 on Monday night, and I'll get the other badges done for you this weekend, and I will see you Monday.